Today's conversation is not the most exciting conversation, but if you're over the age of 18 and you live in the United States, this conversation you need to hear. Today, we're talking about how everyday citizens can help protect the federal elections. And I'm sitting today with Mr. Mark Gotz of Experts. Mark, how are you today?
Hi, David.
This is Election Conversations. Find your voice. Conversations. Find your voice. Find your voice.
Good.
Find your voice.
Before we get started, can you briefly explain your background into election oversight and why this topic is so important right now?
Yes, I started monitoring and getting involved in elections in 1998. I was also involved in the Bush-Gore recount in 2000 and the recount for the Allen West election up here in St. Lucie County back in 2012. And a group of us, after the 2012 recount, started getting involved in the elections at every 2 years. And so we've been monitoring it for over a decade now.
So before we go any further, can you clarify the purpose of this conversation, what it is and what it's not?
Yes. Conversation is to motivate people to be trained to be the umpires of their elections. Basically, to understand the process and also understand the rules. That way they can be a very good umpire and oversee their elections, make sure that they're free and fair.
Okay. So why is election integrity more than just a political issue, and why is it fundamental to the stability of a republic?
Well, in a republic, especially our republic, which is run by the people, this is part of the experiment that has been going on for 230 years now. And so it's up to the people to get involved in their elections and make sure not only that they vote, but they also oversee the election process itself.
You said something that was really important in what you just said. You said, you talked about us people, which our Constitution begins with, we are the people. From your perspective, what responsibility does that put on a voter to more than just cast the vote?
Well, protecting the election process itself is very, very important. Obviously, the most important thing is to vote, but then you want to make sure that your vote is counted properly. So oversight and daylight, as they like to say, is the best thing to make us aware that the elections that have been run have been run.
So what happens when a society confidence in that election erodes?
Well, when your confidence erodes, you stop participating. And when you stop participating, we're losing the basis of what our republic is about, which is a republic that's by the people. We are a representative form of government. We elect our representatives. So that is very important to us maintaining our governmental format.
So what is the election experts' game plan for validating election, and why does this structured approach matter?
Well, it's a 5-point plan, and it basically takes elections apart from a pre-election process to election month now, process of what to do, and then a post-election audit. We also cover problems and solutions that we believe are in the system now. So it's a 5-point plan, and we feel that if people are trained in this, they will be able to monitor their elections properly, and this is a full-time task.
You know, one of the things that stood out to me was that the game plan that you folks put together was geared towards regular everyday citizens instead of officials and experts.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell me why that design was so important?
Yes, because it is not in the power of any election official or any elected official, meaning any of our representatives or senators or governors or anyone else, they do not have the power to do this. The only people who have the power to monitor and ensure that their elections are properly run are the people.
So, do regular everyday citizens actually have the legal authority to be involved in the election oversight process?
Absolutely. The two major federal election laws, which are the National Voter Registration Act of 1993 and the Help America Vote Act of 2002, both have provisions for individual persons to take action if they feel there's a problem.
So, in plain terms, can you explain what does NVRA Section 11B allow a citizen to do?
Right. In 11B, a person who is aggrieved by a violation of the Election Act may provide written notice of the violation to the chief election official of the state involved. And if that violation is not cured, you have a right to bring civil action and receive attorney's fees.
So how does HAVA Section 402 reinforce a citizen's right to act when something doesn't add up?
Yes, the Help America Vote Act of 2002 expands on the National Voter Registration Act. In Section 402B, any person who believes that there is a violation of any provision of the Voting Act, including a violation which has occurred, which is currently occurring or is about to occur, may file a complaint.
So let's talk about the pre-election oversight. Why is the pre-election phase so critical to election integrity?
Well, it's very important to know the players of the game and make sure that they are all eligible to play. So your voter registration rolls are the basis of the players who need to be validated as eligible voters. So by going through and reviewing your registrations in your state or even in your district, you're going to find out who should be there and who may be questionable.
So what risks are created when the oversight focus only on election day instead of the full election cycle?
Right, election day is basically 1 day out of a 2-year period. The election process and operation itself is 24/7, 365. People register to vote every day, and consequently, it needs to be monitored on an ongoing basis.
So let's pivot to validation of voter registrations. What does proper voter registration validation require under federal law?
Under federal law, you have a 3-point process. Number 1, you have to be over the age of 18. Number 2, you have to be a U.S. citizen. Okay. And number 3, you have to live in the jurisdiction where you're going to cast your vote.
Okay. So when the required elements are missing, what should happen procedurally?
Well, when that's found, basically these registrations need to be flagged and brought to your election officials and basically either be validated or removed from the rolls.
In our past conversations, you've mentioned something that I wanted to ask you. What does that mean? You said that validation is more about compliance than removal.
Right.
Can you touch on that for me?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, basically, every constitution of every state in the union all require that you have certain requirements to be a valid voter, a qualified, validated voter. And so those need to be processed and viewed to make sure that it's operational in the process of our elections.
Okay. So let's move on to statewide registration list.
Mhm.
Uh, why does the election experts believe that a single centralized statewide voter database is such a critical thing?
Well, the election experts are actually following federal law. In the National Voter Registration Act, I believe it's Section 8, requires that every state have a computerized election rolls, and that these are centralized. Now, by being centralized, it helps because we have 67 counties here in Florida, and basically we would be at 67 different areas to validate votes, where a centralized portion allows you to validate all the votes that your election official has, all the voters and the registrations in one place.
Okay. So how would this system identify county level inconsistencies?
Well, it helps because the statewide registration rolls are broken down into counties. So you can get the count from your state registration roll and match that with the county that your supervisor of elections has on their count as far as eligible voters.
Okay. So, and that was really great. But let's move on to voter cleaning voter rolls.
Mm-hmm.
How does the United States Postal Service National Change of Address process factor into voter maintenance?
Well, the national change of address by the United States Postal Service is a major factor, because if you look at the three forms of becoming registered, being over the age of 18, being a U.S. citizen, jurisdiction is the one that changes the most out of those three. And that jurisdiction is basically a key. So if you've changed your address, you moved out of your jurisdiction, you're no longer a valid voter in that jurisdiction.
Now, so what concern would arise when voters are placed on inactive status instead of being removed after proper notice?
Right. The inactive status is put together by the election officials notifying somebody that they have a change of address that they've received through the national national change of address through the post office. So they have to contact the last address that registered voter had. If they don't get a response, they put them on an inactive list. They should not be on the inactive list. They should be removed from the rolls because they failed the jurisdiction provision of a valid voter.
So is that why continuous monitoring of voter rolls so important?
Absolutely. That's why you need to be on that task all the time, because registrations come in on an ongoing basis between elections.
So let's go to election month procedures.
Okay.
What should observers be tracking on a daily basis during election month?
All right. Election month, the objective of our procedures in election month is to identify the total votes that were cast. Votes are cast in early voting, if the state allows. Votes are obviously cast on election day. The one that is most difficult to follow is the vote by mail ballots, and that has to be kept up on a daily basis by contacting your election officials to find out how many vote by mail ballots came in through the United States Postal Service, through any drop boxes they have, or dropped off at the election official's office. That has to be kept every day, and you should know what that number is.
So what type of discrepancy should raise red flags for observers?
Well, by counting all the votes, you will come up with a total. Now, that total may not be exactly what your election official has, but it should be within a very small fraction of a differentiation. If you have counted 100,000 votes and your election official says that they've counted 125,000 votes, you now have a basis to take action regarding a contest of that election because your number doesn't match theirs by a large margin.
So Let's discuss provisional ballots. Okay. What does HAVA require when voting hours are extended by court order?
Okay. The provisional ballot is required on any vote that comes in after the polls close on election day. So anything that comes in late has to be voted as a provisional ballot and not a ballot that normally came in during the election period.
So is that why ballot segregation is such a critical safeguard in this?
Yes, it is, because you have provisional ballots that are cast during the election process, that 30-day process, especially on early voting and election day. Any concerns about whether a person is valid or not, they allow them to vote provisionally. These that come in after need to go to the canvassing board for a full review to make sure that the votes are actually from eligible valid voters.
Yeah. You mentioned the canvassing board, so if you don't mind, explain to us what role the canvassing board plays in the election.
Well, the canvassing board is the arbiter. In other words, they're the ones that if there's a decision to be made about a ballot, whether it should be cast or not cast, goes through the canvassing board. The canvassing board also sees the opening of all vote-by-mail ballots is done during a canvassing board meeting. So consequently, the basis of the canvassing board is to make decisions on voter intent and what the voters, whether a vote is valid or not.
Okay. Can you explain for the viewers the difference between a signature cure and a voter intent standard?
Yes, the signature cure is a process that's done to validate that the vote-by-mail ballot has come in from the actual voter. It's a process where you're matching signatures just like you do on checks at a bank. So that's the one process. The second process, as far as validation and curing, is done when there's a question. Let's say the ballot is not signed. Canvassing board can send that ballot back to the registered voter, asking them for a valid ID, usually a driver's license, to prove that it's a valid vote and it's their vote.
So for a observer raising concerns during canvassing, what advice do you give?
Well, if you're going to raise a concern, you need to know what the rules of the game are. And the rules of the game are outlined in the National Voter Registration Act and also in the Help America Vote Act. So you need to know the basic rules in those, and when you challenge something, you need to be able to challenge it via the federal law, and you need to be able to quote the article and section of the law when you make the challenge. That shows that you have an understanding of the subject.
So, post-election audit.
Mm-hmm.
What does a proper post-election audit look like?
Well, the post-election audit is a validation of the vote-by-mail predominantly. You want to match the vote-by-mail ballots cast to the vote-by-mail envelopes that were received. You should be getting that on that count that we talked about. So as long as those two match pretty close, you've got a valid and clean election. Once again, there's a large discrepancy, say of over 2% of envelopes versus votes cast, you may have a problem.
How does the Election Assistance Committee guidance strengthen this process?
Well, the Election Assistance Committee, which was formed in HAVA, American Vote Act, they basically oversee the process, and they are a reporting entity. They are a governmental entity that gets the reports from the state about their elections.
I've heard you emphasize that audits are confirmation, not accusations.
Mm-hmm.
What does that mean?
Well, audits are basically done in most businesses just to verify the numbers of the business. And consequently, it's the same thing in elections. All you're doing is validating the election numbers that have been relayed to the public.
If a citizen believed a violation of Title III of Housing occurred, what legal options are there?
They have the ability to take actions against their chief election officials. And if the situation is not cured in a period of time, then they have a chance to get injunctive relief via the courts.
Why does preparation before election month matter? Why, when timelines are tight?
Well, if you're going to challenge an election or contest an election, you want to have your paperwork done immediately and have it available to you. The reason for this is because once you file, the court system is relatively slow, and you have a tight window you're going to be operating within.
So this has been a great conversation. You made the unexciting a little more exciting. But my last question is, what is the single most important thing a citizen should understand about their role in protecting elections, federal elections?
Well, the most important thing is to make sure that they can validate that we've had a fair and free election. Counting the vote and taking action if necessary shines light on the election process, which will make everybody in the country very happy. And this was just an outline of what we try to teach and educate the umpires or the citizens of this country. And so if they'd like to drill down deeper than what we've just gone over, they can reach me at theelectionexpert@gmail.com. That's theelectionexpert@gmail.com. And we also have a website they can view, which is theelectionexperts with an S.net, theelectionexperts.net. And we'd love to get questions and try to come up with some answers for those people who have an interest.
Well, Mark, thank you so much. It's been a really educational conversation. And for myself, David Stones, Mr. Mark Gotz from the Election Experts, this has been Election Conversations, and we want to thank you so much for listening with viewing us.
This has been Election Conversations, helping you to find your voice. To find out more about your rights as a voter, visit electionexperts.net or reach Mark Gotz at theelectionexpert@gmail.com. We hope you enjoyed this video. Remember to like and share.